Okay, so this new application is called Card Creator, and I've been working on a card game for a while now related to a book that my wife and I wrote called Second Class Supers. And one of the things that I've tried to do is make those cards look as good as they can. You'll see that I'm still having some issues with the application. It's relatively new. They continue to add new hot fixes all the time for the issues that I've been having. Looks like some of the images that I'm using are still not showing up properly. One of the quick ways to fix it is a little silly, but it works well enough for now until they get a new version of their software out. I'm still messing around with what are called the blueprints, which are kind of the default card templates, and then swapping in the different images that I have available thanks to a great graphic designer that I hired to work on some of these images for me. So you'll see I have the title of the card, the amount of power that the card has, the cost of the card, and how it changes your alignment. And I'll go into more details about the game later on. Right now we're really just kind of focused on what this software can do. I actually printed out a set of cards from this software recently thanks to Staples, and it actually worked out relatively well. They didn't cut them perfectly. Bleed edges, I guess, are a little bit of a problem, but overall I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I'm hoping to do it again once I have all of these cards done and looking all right. I'm not a graphic designer by any stretch of the imagination, so I'm struggling trying to make the actual card frame with the details on it look good, and how you determine which text to use and how big the icon should be and things like that. So if you have any suggestions, I'm always interested in learning more and doing this better. And I've done some simple calculations to be able to bring this product to market, right? To have it so that people could actually buy it out in the world would be like several $1,000s to get to the prototype phase. So I don't know if I'm ever going to get there, but I'm pretty happy at the little bit of progress that I have made for myself and my family to be able to play this game that I've come up with. And a lot of people have seemed to enjoy playtesting it, so I continue to work on it slowly but surely. One of the big parts of the game is actually this alignment part. Alignment determines, are you a superhero or a supervillain? And sometimes in the game you don't really get to choose which direction you go in, and other times people try to influence it. But at the end, if you can get what is the cap, which is an alignment of +10 or -10, and this card comes up, you pick it up and add it to your deck, and it's pretty much a game-winning card unless someone else is pretty stacked in terms of the powers that they have. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm adding back in the images that I had before. One of the downsides of this software currently is that it isn't very good at remembering the changes that you make to the blueprint. So if I accidentally subdivided this area by clicking right now, what would likely happen is all of the images again would be all messed up. I'm hoping that they can fix that soon, because it's messed me up a few times, especially the title area. If you subdivide this at all, unfortunately it seems to, and reattach it. If you subdivide it and reattach it, it'll often lose the information that you put in. So it's a little bit frustrating, and the developers, like I said, it's still early days. They're still working on it. They've been really great at supporting me through all the different things that I want. I've tried many other card making tools, and this one by far is the easiest to use. One feature that I hope they have someday is kind of a CSV import system. There was another deck builder that I used that you could tie it to a CSV and it spit out cards pretty quickly, and I like that. They're making this in Unity, which I find really interesting. I've been trying to learn Unity as well, and it's still something I'm struggling with. I'm not a very strong developer, so I don't know if I'll actually ever build anything in Unity, but I like to think that someday I will. there's a positive and negative card for each superpower. So you can have a super strength that adjusts your alignment positively and a super strength that adjusts your alignment negatively. Actually, one of the issues that I have right now is that you really can't see alignment. So let's try to fix, oh, see, subdivided. Don't want to do that. Wonder how that'll look. Nope, that didn't do what I was hoping at all. I think because I did that. Yep. So now on the bottom you can see the alignment graphic is there. I would just leave it as is, but I think it's kind of difficult to see on some cards. So I haven't decided if I'm going to have a little box behind the information or not. What if one of the cool things is you can have layers, which makes it easier to customize things. I could do semi-transparent. I don't think they allow rounded corners out, like right off the bat. You'd have to be able to go into like Photoshop or another image editing program and create an image like a transparent PNG with rounded corners and then import it, and that's how you'd be able to get rounded corners in this area. And right now, to even just make this background color, I'm using the image type. You can see if I click here, there's a text type, image type, a oh my goodness, icon type, and none. And so I'm using the image type and then a tint, and that's how I'm being able to make that color there, or that shade there. Oops. It's very easy to subdivide different areas. So I can make a dark area at the bottom of the card that's semi-transparent, which would bring out the ability to see that better. I'd have to try it on a card with a very light background to see if that works well enough. Actually, it's funny, invisibility, that's the one that goes with that. Telekinesis. You'll see when I go to some of the other card types that I've used a lot of different blueprints as I've gone forward, and part of that's because I have some different card types. I have some cards that don't have power, I have some cards that don't have alignment. The most basic card though definitely has a title and a cost. So you'll see, for example, Punch has a title, it has a this one has a power, and you know, it says, is this really the hardest I can hit? You'll see Punch doesn't have a cost. The Punch cards, basically they start out in your starting deck or your starting hand, so you don't acquire them through the deck building mechanic in the game. You can see that it has this little green cube on it, and the green cube is just to determine which cards are basic cards. The designer of the cards made this for shapeshifting, but I've never been entirely happy with it. I'm hoping to actually have him do a different design for shapeshifting. Oops. I think since I've started using this application, I've crashed it probably in the neighborhood of a dozen different times due to doing different things. One is if you have huge images that are like over 5 megabytes and you have a lot of them, it seems to be very easy to make the application think it's out of memory and crash. So I've had to resize these images to be a bit smaller to work with this software. It's still printed out really nicely, so I'm not too concerned about it. And last but not least, a lot of people's favorite is the healing factor card. There it is. Yeah, so these are the different supers that you can have. There are, I think, 19 of them. Yep, 19. This game is basically for between 2 and 4 players, typically taking about half an hour to 45 minutes to play, so it's not a long game by any stretch. The idea though is that each player, so if you have 4 players and each player can have a maximum of 5 supers, that means for sure, no matter what, there's going to be one player that doesn't have all 5. I haven't played a game where everyone has gotten that many, partly because the system for economy is actually set up in such a way that it's pretty rare to get a ton of money and get tons of supers. But when you do, it's very easy to become very powerful very quickly. And you'll see, like I said, this is that error where, you know, I have this image attached to the card, but it doesn't show the card face at all. I'm hoping that they're going to work on a hotfix patch for this. I've discussed it in their forum a little bit, so we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, for now, what they have me doing is resizing the card, which reloads the preview, and then it works properly. So you can see, like, this is the design that I was using before, and then I've added in this kind of like effect here with the dots to make it kind of comic booky, and now I've added in this bottom bar here rather than doing this. I don't know how I can do like a text area, because you'll see some of them have like a larger amount of text anyways. So for example, like this one, draw another card, and requires an alignment. That's 2 lines of text that we'd have to add in. Option to trash and redraw supers or main deck flop, one-time use. So again, lots of text. So if I do something similar to this, I'll have to figure out how to involve that text. I mean, these cards here without text, they work rather well, but anything with a rule in it, and it, you know, starts to look a little sloppy. It has a grid mode, which is actually fairly nice as well. I don't use it probably as much as I should to line up things, but it does exist. So if you're one of those people that likes everything to be pixel perfect, you know, you can use the grid mode to help you with that. There's really no like super good font things. So you can see here, I don't have the ability to bold the text. I don't have the ability to put like a drop shadow or any kind of special text effects in place. I really just have, you know, the font size, the color, and of course the fade of that color, and then the alignment. And same with icons, you don't really have a lot of control over them either, which is kind of disappointing. Like I wish I could, like this icon specifically doesn't feel like it's as big as it could be in that spot. And in order to make it bigger, you know, I'm not exactly sure how I can easily do that. Oops, I have grid on and everything's wanting to lock to grid. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. Now, of course, one of the downsides as well is the blueprint system isn't great at controlling changes between different blueprints, which means that if I want this same kind of look, but I don't want, you know, the alignment section, I'll have to duplicate this blueprint and change it, or I have to go to this one here and, you know, try to apply some of these same changes to it. So merging those different changes for these different card sets can be a little bit difficult, but I understand why they did that, and I think it makes a lot of sense for the program. Another thing that I've been having fun working on is Annie's family is quite tight. Annie is my wife, and every once in a while I like to play Cards Against Humanity. So I figured that making a deck of, you know, cards against her family would be kind of fun. One of the sample games or sample collections or projects that actually comes with the software is Cards Against People. It's cool. You can do fronts and backs of different cards as well. If we go back to Cards Against Packs. If we go back to this, you'll see that I actually did put, or at least I thought I did. Yeah, I did put a back on here. I don't know why it didn't show in the preview. Oh, it's just being glitchy. Yeah, another thing to show the devs. But when you export it, you can actually also see it as well, which is great. And from here, you can kind of control the spacing, image format of the output, the size of the paper you're going to print on, whether it's portrait or landscape, which set of cards you want to do, or if you want to do all the cards. You can override the scale, maybe make it like 0.5. You can have these little like tiny cards, or humongous cards. You can tell it where you want it to export it, and it'll export a whole bunch of images. It'll export a PDF, and it'll even support a special piece of game software. What the heck is it called? I'm looking through my list on Steam right now because I know I own it, but I don't think I have it installed on this computer. Tabletop Simulator. So yeah, it'll output Tabletop Simulator format as well, so that you can import it into that to, you know, digitally playtest your card games as you create them. I think that's a great set of features. So yeah, that's Card Creator version 2.2.1 at this point. If you haven't checked it out, if you're interested in card making, you definitely should. And if you have any suggestions on how I can make my cards look better, feel free. I'm definitely interested.